I mean, all we seek is an open playing field for U.S. companies to compete, right? And we are confident, and we've seen this time and time again, when that open playing field is available, uh, the technology and ideas and innovation and life cycle costs of American companies often win the day. Not always, of course, but we believe competition is a good thing as long as it's open. And we have seen it be very, very open here in Saudi Arabia, which is great.
This is the 966.
We have the pleasure now of speaking with Mr. James Golsen, Senior Commercial Officer for Saudi Arabia and Bahrain and Counselor for Commercial Affairs at the U.S. Embassy in Riyadh, a role he's held since 2021. Mr. Golsen's career has taken him around the globe and back again. Previously, he was Senior Commercial Officer in Moscow from 2019 to 2021. And before that, he was at the U.S. Department of Commerce as Executive Director of Asia. He's held top-level commercial roles at embassies across Asia, including Chennai, Thailand, Shanghai, Myanmar. James, thanks so much for joining us on the 966.
Thank you. It's a great privilege to be here with you.
James, we are delighted to have you. And we have to do a couple things, a little backstory here. We have to do a shout out to our friend, Steve Lutz.
Mm-hmm.
Steve is Vice President, Middle East for the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, a good friend of ours. And he was a guest on the 966 a few episodes ago. Well, a really good episode. I recommend it to you. And afterwards, we were just talking, and I said, I'm headed out there. And he said, you've got to see my friend, Jim Golsen. And he said, well, whatever you do, you got to go see him because he's doing great work out there. He's extremely active. He's bringing the community together, promoting U.S. business interests. So he was very complimentary, James, and as it turns out, my timing was good. I got to come by your pad out at the DQ, which is a lovely gathering spot with its own podium, I might say, Lucian. I might add. It's nice in the backyard. It's got a nice podium and a big sort of stage. Did that come with the house, James?
It did. It's not custom built.
Richard probably walked right to it.
But let's talk about your experience in Saudi Arabia, and let's start with Lucian alluded to it. He talked about he noted all the places you've served. Can you talk a little bit about your journey with commerce, like as Lucian said, Shanghai, Thailand, and that great wilderness, Washington D.C., where you were for a time. But please tell us about this.
Yeah, absolutely, Richard. Thank you. I think when we do well as commercial officers, as foreign service officers, we're in markets that are complex and are growing. And so I've had the good fortune of starting my career in Shanghai, China. This was the early 2000s. Things were really booming. It's great training ground. I mean, it was nonstop action. And frankly, in hindsight, it prepared me for what I'm doing now in Riyadh. And then I certainly got the bug there in China, went over to Thailand, and Thailand has an incredible American business community. Really learned the ropes, working with high-level policy engagements with U.S. companies. Then from there over to India, which again, just incredible complexity, incredible opportunity. I covered Chennai, Bangalore, and Hyderabad. Just a great posting, very dynamic market. Following that, I had the opportunity to open our office in Myanmar and Burma, and that was really a career milestone. Everything was new. They were just adopting Western technology for the first time, so incredibly exciting. And then, yes, off to Washington, D.C. for a few years and took my lessons there, and it's a whole different game there, of course, and we can talk about that if you like. And then over to Moscow for 2 years, which was a really challenging post, but an important post. We were trying to navigate some difficult currents while at the same time supporting what existing trade was happening there. And fortunately, the opportunity arose to come to Saudi Arabia before things really went south in Moscow, and I jumped on it because I knew a lot of colleagues in the private sector and in the diplomatic service that worked here. And they said, what's going on in Riyadh, you cannot miss. So my journey has been a very fortunate one. I've really sought out those opportunities where there's complexity and where there's growth, because I think that's where people in my position can try to add some value. So I'm really grateful for the journey I've had to date.
That's fascinating, and it is funny how that works. Talented people sort of find interesting places, and so when you were in China, that was right when they joined the WTO.
Exactly. And I had worked at the U.S. Chamber of Commerce previous to my government service, and I worked on China's WTO ascension. And yeah, China was and remains, one of the most complex markets. But as I said, an incredible training ground. Just every challenge that you can imagine, which gives again people in public service the chance to problem solve on behalf of U.S. companies.
Well, and let's bring it up to date, because your timing in Saudi is fascinating too. And you arrived there in July 2021, in the midst of a lot of change. I mean, it's, as you mentioned, it's an exciting time, and as your colleagues and friends said, you really want to be here in Saudi. So you arrived. It's sort of still COVID. Sort of a little bit of, everything was still dampened by, COVID protocols and that sort of thing. But what's your experience been since you've been in Saudi Arabia? And my understanding is you're extremely active. You're bringing together, convening people out there all the time. So it sounds like you're going nonstop. But tell us about what it's been like there now, close to, in a few months, it'll be 2 years.
Yeah, no, it's been extraordinary, honestly. So when I arrived, we were just coming out of COVID. And so what that means is there was not a lot of public engagement. So there was a really pent up demand for that kind of engagement. And so I seized that opportunity, as you say, to convene multiple events. But, I did not come to Riyadh with a background in the Middle East. And a lot of my colleagues have, and I really do value their experience. But in a way, I think it helped me, because I kind of arrived in Saudi Arabia at this time of profound change and really didn't, have that reference point of what it was 5 to 10 years ago. Certainly learned a lot from my friends and colleagues that have been here for 20 years. And again, I, incredible respect for the work that they have done. But, arriving in Riyadh, you just sense the energy straight away. And whether it's the government, the private sector, the giga projects, people were working hard, 7 days a week, clearly some real time pressure to accomplish Vision 2030. And so the challenge for me was to get up to speed quickly. And I did do that by convening folks who had been here a long time. And this, Richard, Saudis are incredibly hospitable and very easy to get to know in my experience, and very helpful. So, trying to match my experience with the moment and plugging into that energy and excitement was a challenge, but it was a great challenge. And certainly it's been a fun ride ever since.
Yes, Lucian and I often comment on the hospitality and the welcoming nature, and the affinity, often Americans have with Saudis. What's in the big view, what's the state of play in the U.S. Saudi commercial relationship? We can talk trade numbers and in goods and services, that sort of thing. I'd love to get the big macro picture, but also your insights as to the actual activity on the ground, the kind of energy, what direction things are headed.
Yeah, absolutely. So, clearly everyone knows about the strong foundation we have in energy and defense, and that's been ongoing for a very long time. It's been very productive for both countries and continues. What I noticed immediately were these emerging sectors that the Saudis are developing at a rapid pace. And this is anything from healthcare to the entertainment sector to the digital economy. And they really are hiring the best people from around the world, including incredibly talented Saudis who have worked all around the world. And so, yes, the numbers are strong. U.S. exports are up. We recently had the announcement of the Boeing deal for Riyadh Air, which was not only a huge accomplishment for Boeing and for the kingdom, but really demonstrated that U.S. companies can deliver on the ambitious plans for 2030. Let's keep in mind that the airline is being launched to support, the incredible tourism goals of the kingdom. to bring 100 million tourists annually to Saudi Arabia, and want to have an airport that can airport and airline that can facilitate that. So, that's just one data point of many that we see, a big one, of course. But U.S. companies are seeing opportunities here in these new sectors, and Saudi Arabia is really reaching out to partner with them to accomplish their goals.
Well, and that's an important point. I'd like to dig into that a little bit, because you're right that there's bulwark relationships that have always been in place in the business community in the defense and energy sector, and we've talked about. We've had Bill Foster, who is president of AmCham KSA, on the show. We've had Steve Lutz on the show, and we, are big fans and recognize how critical really these business ties are. One of the things that commerce and trade tries to do is tries to help small and medium-sized enterprises get into markets. And traditionally, especially overseas, but in the region too, that's tough for a lot of American small and medium SMEs, because they don't really have the staying power to come and just set up shop. They may not be able to do market studies, any number of things. Are you seeing, and you mentioned three sectors: healthcare, entertainment, digital economy. Are you seeing greater U.S. activity interest on the part of the non-traditional players in terms of U.S. corporations?
Yeah, absolutely. And I should mention last June, the two governments launched the U.S. Saudi Commercial Work Plan. This was launched by Secretary Raimondo, our Secretary of Commerce, and His Excellency, the Minister of Commerce, Dr. Majid Al-Kasabi. And it's focused on four key areas. One is the green economy, and that's all things renewable. The second is two-way investment. The third is innovation. And the fourth is SMEs and women in business. And under this fourth pillar of the work plan, we are both governments are working to get small and medium-sized companies plugged into the opportunities. And we have had numerous success stories bringing small companies over here. The Saudi government is very helpful in laying the groundwork for small companies to set up operations. They understand the challenges that you mentioned. We in my office help vet partners for American small companies. We help with really kind of bespoke matchmaking to get them to the right people that can plug them into the opportunities. And just this afternoon, we had a company in my office that has an AI application that helps with essentially tracking assets, whether it's a fleet or people entering a concert. And they found great success. And that's just one of, probably 60 in the past 6 months that we've helped enter the market. So yes, it is hard for small companies. But with support from my office, from partners like the American Chamber and the Saudi government, we have seen some really good success.
So this is interesting. It's the U.S. Saudi work plan.
U.S. Saudi commercial work plan.
Commercial work plan. We're big fans of His Excellency Dr. Majid Al-Kasabi, the Minister of Commerce, Saudi Minister of Commerce. And I'm not all surprised that it's called a work plan.
The name sounds a little familiar. Yeah.
Well, no, I mean, because he's all business. He's not, this isn't a vision. This isn't a strategy. This is a work plan.
Yeah.
And I have to be honest with you, James, I'd like to hear more about that, because I don't think enough people know. I didn't realize, we pay a lot of attention to the Saudi Ministry of Commerce and the good work they do and the people they have. But this is interesting. So in the three areas of the green economy, two-way investment, innovation, and SMEs with a focus on women, and correct?
Yeah.
And does this have this was put in place when?
June of last year. So June.
So it's still less than a year old. And you're happy with you guys, everyone's happy with the progress to date?
Yeah, no, I'm happy to touch on kind of highlights for all four, if you like.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah.
Yeah, so let's start with innovation. So we have been working closely with our private sector partners, including the U.S. Chamber and the American Chamber of Commerce, to work on the regulatory framework that helps foster investment in the innovative economy. And I've got to say, it's been very productive. We really are grateful for the Saudi government listening to industry and making adjustments and the policy framework that helps facilitate this investment. And we had the LEAP conference here, almost 2 months ago. And there were nearly $5 billion worth of contracts to U.S. companies awarded at that conference. And yes, all the big names, but also a lot of small companies as well. And that would have only been possible through the policy framework and the changes and the consultation, really, not just between the governments, but with the private sector. So we've seen really good progress there. It's really just the beginning. We're looking forward to the AI summit in September in Riyadh. And again, plugging into these small companies. So a lot of progress on innovation. On the green economy, just last week in Dhahran at the U.S. consulate, we held a event on carbon capture with the Ministry of Energy, with Aramco, and with the U.S. business community. And it was really a productive session, what we call trade talks. It's really an exchange of ideas and coming up with plans to really utilize the latest technology to help achieve Saudi's green economy goals. Now, of course, this provides opportunities for U.S. technology providers, but also addresses the key policy goals for both countries. In the U.S., of course, we have the Inflation Reduction Act, which is creating all kinds of opportunities and new regulations that companies are just beginning to figure out. So that is also a very exciting space. About 3 weeks ago in Riyadh, we did a similar event, but focused on third country investments and working with Saudi companies and U.S. companies in places like Egypt and Morocco and Jordan to build out that infrastructure for the green economy. So really kind of pragmatic, business-focused discussions about how we can start these projects. Go ahead.
No, I didn't want to interrupt you. That's excellent and really informative. It speaks to something we talk about there on the 966, and we talk a lot about the changing relationship, the U.S. Saudi relationship, and at the policy level, we're not going to worry about that here. But Saudi Arabia looking obviously to diversify its political relationships, to maintain its key commercial relationships that trend east, certainly in terms of energy, and they're trying to refashion the U.S. Saudi relationship. And I think what we talk about, Nushin, I think you'll agree, is on the 966 is we're all for this, because if it's a competition, the U.S. American company, American technology, American minds is perfectly well suited to compete and succeed, which is why I love hearing this, because this is a real conversation about let's lay out the framework, the regulatory environment, and let's see what you have.
Yeah. No, absolutely. I mean, competition comes up all the time, whether it's from the east, north, west, or south. And like you said, we welcome that. I mean, all we seek is an open playing field for U.S. companies to compete, right? And we are confident, and we've seen this time and time again, when that open playing field is available, the technology and ideas and innovation and life cycle cost of American companies often win the day. Not always, of course, but we believe competition is a good thing as long as it's open. And we have seen it be very, very open here in Saudi Arabia, which is great.
So before we change our perspective and our point of view, I just want you to, will you run down for me the services offered by the International Trade Administration and the commercial services to
Sure.
a prospective business, because it's significant and it's broad and it's deep.
Absolutely. So we can start with commercial advocacy. And this is anytime a U.S. company is bidding on a public tender, we will work with that company to develop a strategy to advocate on their behalf with the Saudi government decision maker. So this is something we use for high profile projects. There's no cost involved. And Saudi Arabia is one of the largest advocacy case countries for the United States in the world, most of which are successful. So that's for the big companies. Then we can talk about what we do, called a single company promotion. And you mentioned that we do convene a lot of events. You've been to my house before, and since I've been here, I've had 52 events in my house.
Wow.
Promoting U.S. companies or U.S. associations, and it's been great. And so we can do that at a hotel. We can do it at the embassy or at my residence, depending on the type of event we're looking for. But typically the goal is to really promote a company and what they're doing that's new, their solution, and turn out the right kind of crowd of Saudis. And we've had great success with that. Now, shifting over to the smaller companies, we have a series of services that we provide. One is called the Gold Key service. A company will essentially, we work with them to define their objective to enter the market. And then we do a very structured matchmaking to achieve that objective. And that can be with Saudi business families, Saudi companies, the government, distributors, agents. It varies every single time. So that's a very popular service.
The Gold Key service is fee-based, right?
It is fee-based, yeah.
Right.
So we are mandated by Congress anytime we do focused energy on one company and their commercial success, we have to recover the cost. But typically this costs about $900 for a series of a couple of days of pre-vetted meetings. So definitely affordable.
But again, exactly, that's an extraordinary value for a small SME.
Yeah, and it really does help get them get their feet on the ground. And we also do a due diligence check. So we call that an international company profile. So once they find that partner, they want to make sure that their bank records and reputational risks are taken care of. And so we work with contractors and in-house with our locally employed staff, which are extraordinary. Many of whom have worked in the market for 20 years to produce that report that gives the U.S. companies some confidence in their partner.
Are U.S. companies tapping into these resources?
They are. I'm very happy to say we have the highest volume of these services, certainly in the Middle East and Africa. So we are, yes, very much engaged with SMEs in this space.
And this is across the whole U.S. commercial service? You're
Correct.
talking. So that's fascinating. It's strange, Lucian, because remember we were surprised when Steve Lutz, was with the U.S. Chamber, a huge organization, and obviously their international, branch is also large, and he was saying that the largest percentage of employees in focus is on the Middle East. This is U.S. Chamber, and so the U.S. commercial service, we're seeing the same thing. Just fascinating. Thank you, James. So. Change of perspective for you, and you said you weren't a Middle East expert or a Saudi expert. Can you talk but here you are, you land in Saudi Arabia about, really interestingly enough, if Vision 2030 was announced in June 2016, a lot of the implementation, a lot of momentum, you started to see 2020, 21 about when you arrived, and really picking up now. Looking at it from Saudi Arabia, how would you assess this from Saudi Arabia's perspective? What it means to the country, what it means to the community, what it means to the youth, to the commercial and business and communities, sort of across the board. What's your take?
Well, as I think you both know, Saudi is a very young population, right? 70% under the age of 35, and across the board, everyone we talk to. The vision is inspirational. I mean, it's very ambitious. They've already accomplished certain key elements, for example, women in the workforce. So, key elements of the vision have been accomplished, but incredible ambition as well. We see the giga projects, we see NEOM, and I think it gives people inspiration that there is hope, and there's not just hope, but, this incredible goal in mind for the country, and people are behind that. And so the young people of Saudi Arabia, by that I mean people 35 and younger that we deal with on a regular basis, are incredibly excited about what's happening here. So it's a great time to be here. It's a huge amount of optimism.
It really is the filter that every Saudi we know looks at themselves now, is the Vision 2030 filter, sort of where we're headed, what we're trying to do, what we're capable of doing. It's a significant difference from 5 years ago, when you didn't have that sort of organizing thought and that organizing mission, in essence. So I'm going to ask you to speculate, which responsible people don't do. What What would you like to see see vis-a-vis the U.S. Saudi business environment between here and 2030? 2030 being the sort of a benchmark where Saudi Arabia wants to achieve some percentage of its goals. How do you want to see the U.S. Saudi business relationship evolve?
Yeah. So again, I think those emerging new sectors is what I really want to see companies plug into. And what I've seen in my almost 2 years here is once people come for the first time and see it for themselves, they are true believers. But there is a bit of a knowledge gap, a bit of a knowledge lag for companies that have not been here recently. And so what I'd really like to see is more companies come. And when they do come, they talk to multiple people. They talk to us, they talk to the Saudi government, they talk to expats, they talk to Saudis, as they should, and make their own judgment. But, seeing is believing. And I think what people really leave with once they come after their first time is the energy and really the fact that, the younger Saudis have really bought into this and are trying to execute as quickly as possible. So again, I think U.S. companies can provide those solutions that can accomplish the goals, because a lot of what drives things here is time pressure under Vision 2030. It's incredibly ambitious. For 7 years to the goal. And so if companies come in with a solution that can help achieve that, objective X within that time frame, they will find the doors wide open.
New ambassador coming in, Michael Ratney, is he there yet? I mean, is he on the ground? Do you know the status of that? And is there excitement for his appointment and his position there?
No, he is not on the ground yet. He has been confirmed, and so we do expect him in the coming weeks. There is absolutely excitement, both from the business community and from everyone else in Riyadh. So we are very eager to welcome Ambassador Ratney in a few weeks' time.
We're delighted. I mean, as observers of Saudi Arabia and as champions of the U.S. Saudi relationship, especially U.S. interests in the region, it pains us. Martina Strong has done a very good job. She's an extremely capable diplomat, but it pains us to see that, of this last 7 years, 5 of those, we haven't had an ambassador on seat in Saudi Arabia. And that's just that's a political, problem here at home. This has nothing to do with it, but we're delighted that, Ambassador Ratney has been confirmed and will come out and be able to be there on the ground, because it does make a difference.
Yeah, absolutely. And you mentioned Martina Strong, our charge d'affaires, almost 5 years in Riyadh, and incredible advocate for U.S. companies. And so I know the business community here, and we all wish her nothing but the best. But yes, having an ambassador here will be incredible.
If I'm Ambassador Ratney, I'd implore Martina Strong just to stay on a little bit longer, just so I can hang out with you and learn all that you've learned in 5 years. Because so often, I've been here 5 years, I gotta go, or they're moved out. But it'd be nice if they had some overlap, because as you say, there's a lot of experience and wisdom in being on the ground there.
James, can I ask one more question? And it kind of plugs into Richard's first question. When you found out that you were going to be moving to Riyadh, what was the first reaction? Like, what was the first thought you had in your head about this? I mean, because you hadn't spent a lot of time there. You have a lot of experience traveling around the world, but in that, you get the news that you're going to be the commercial officer in Riyadh. How did you feel? Like, what was your reaction?
So, honestly, I was excited because before I opened the door to that opportunity, I did my research. After being around as long as I've been around in the foreign commercial service, I talked to loads of people, both in the private sector and in my predecessors. And so I had a sense of what to expect. So I honestly, I was excited. But equally honestly, when I got here, I didn't realize how much was going on. Oh. So it was a nice surprise. I will just mention one more thing on the SMEs and women pillar. We are bringing a delegation of Saudi women startups to the United States in May, and they're going to Washington, Detroit, and the Bay Area, San Francisco. And so, part of what I said about companies coming here and seeing it for themselves, we also feel the responsibility to take Saudis to the U.S. And these Saudis that we were bringing are incredible. Young women, startup leaders, most of whom have at least 3 to 4 different jobs, all of whom have capital. So they're not seeking, venture capital, they're seeking ideas and partners. And so, we're incredibly excited about this because some of the smartest people in the world that I've dealt with operate in this space. And we really look forward to plugging them into kind of the broader U.S. business community just to raise awareness.
Yeah, and there's no better sort of little Richard and I use the term ambassadors when these things happen, because it's just like nothing does a better job at showing Americans and the other way around, like the real Saudi Arabia when they meet people like this. It's amazing. Mr. James Golsen, Senior Commercial Officer for Saudi Arabia and Bahrain, joining us from Riyadh. Thank you so much for your time, James. This was awesome.
No, thank you both. Really a pleasure to be with you, and thank you for having me on.